literature needs to be viewed through a little bit of a broader lens. The subject's purpose really is about understanding the world through the lens of stories. What can we learn about culture and society around us? What can we learn about history? What can we learn about gender, race, power, sexuality? How can we learn about these things via literature? What does literature teach us about our lives and the people that surround us in our lives as well? That's really what literature is about, and that's why it prompts us often throughout Year 12 in particular to think deeper, to really dig into the text, peel back the layers, and think outside the box about how we interact with texts as well. All right, just like any of your subjects, the secret to doing better in literature is found within a simple phrase. This is my golden rule, and it's a golden rule I teach to all of my students, whether they're literature students or history students or drama students. The name of the game is to work smarter and not harder. And what that means is that you're setting yourself up for success as early in the term as possible to reduce your workload when you're in crunch time preparing for the hand in of an assignment or an exam. We're going to blast through over the course of the next couple of slides of a series of tools that you can use to build up for yourself weeks and weeks and weeks before an assignment is actually due. So we're all about reducing the pressure during crunch time and setting yourself up for success as early as possible. The number one tool I want to promote for you guys in your toolbox is quote books. One of the number one things that students say to me is they say, oh, I just don't understand how I'm supposed to memorize a whole bunch of quotes, a whole bunch of evidence for an unseen external exam. I don't know how I'm supposed to find good evidence. I don't know how I'm supposed to do that. And I go, when's your exam? And they say, about a week from today. And I gasp and I go, why haven't you been gathering evidence this whole time? Why haven't you been collecting evidence this whole time? I'm kidding. I'm not that panicked. I'm actually incredibly calm when this situation is brought to me. But my encouragement for you guys is to be collecting and collating evidence as soon as you can, as soon as you open that text for the first time. So I want you to put together a quote book nice and early, and you compile evidence as you go. As it appears in the text, you highlight it, you mark it with a sticky tab, you write it down, you type it into your little online quote book or write it down in a little book, a physical book, including a little bit of detail to help yourself in the future as well. Who is it that said this particular quote? Who did they say it to? What specific aesthetic features are used within it? And what sort of way was it said, if that is important as well? All of that information can be used in your analysis, so make sure that you're including those little extra elements as well. It can be really, really helpful when you're practicing writing a paragraph or pulling together a plan or argument. The next thing I'm going to say is study notes. And really, when I say study notes, I just mean that you need to be compiling all of your resources that you get throughout the term into one place. So it doesn't need to be overly complicated and professional. It doesn't have to be formatted lovely. You don't have to have footnotes or page numbers or anything like that. It just needs to be one place where all of the resources you have about the text or the topic that you're studying is all together. Some things I also encourage you to have in your study notes are notes of conversations that you have in class. I found for literature in particular, often the very best resources are just really sporadic conversations that were had in class. Someone had a question, a whole bunch of people had opinions on the answer. You bounced around on certain ideas, you came up with perspectives that others hadn't thought of, you debated over whether a character was good or evil. All of those sorts of things are so invaluable. So while you're having those conversations in class, act as a little bit of a scribe for the conversation and jot things down. Of course, you don't have to write down everything, and you don't have to write down everything word for word. You can just dot point things out. But having some of those points and ideas, even if they're ideas or opinions that contradict your own, is so valuable. So perspectives on all manner of themes, characters, relationships, and even practice analysis. So as you're working through the term, I encourage you to be practicing analyzing various things, practice analyzing various quotes, characterizations, stylistic features, all of those sorts of things. And I'm also going to encourage each and every one of you to have your own perspective on every element of a text. Decide whether you like the main character or not. It's fine if you don't. There's no rule saying you have to like the main character. But make that decision and have your own opinion on everything. Because then when you're writing your final piece, it's a lot easier to actually come up with the argument because it's something that you believe to be true yourself. So come up with opinions and hold them and debate them and discuss them in class. It's really an invaluable experience, and it will actually set you up really well for university, particularly if you're studying anything in the humanities side of the spectrum. But business, economics, law, all of those sorts of things require these kind of conversations as well. So definitely be having those debates. I like to argue that a well-annotated text is the very best gift you could give your future self, and I'm really not lying or exaggerating when I say that. If you have annotated your text well, it becomes a million times easier to find important information in the text rather than having to laboriously flip through 800 pages trying to find that one quote you thought of that one time. And it ensures that you have understanding as you read. If you're interacting with a text that's really old, that was written, 100 years ago or more, or one that was originally written in a different language, or one that was written in Shakespearean, then you can often read through a chapter or a scene and finish it and think, I really don't get a single thing that happened in that. If you're going through and annotating, it allows you to check your understanding and find out what the author meant when they were saying these sorts of things. Why did they make these intentional choices? Oh, I've noticed that this character has grown in this particular way, or this particular relationship is developing and changing. So being able to note and identify all of these different things means that when you're practicing writing paragraphs, essays, or coming up with plans or things, then you have all of that preliminary analysis ready to go in the margins of your own book. So definitely be thinking about annotating as you go. Base your annotations on the structure of key questions. So typically in any sort of analytical task, the questions that you're asked are based within one of 5 categories. So the number one is author's intent. What did the author want us to understand by the end of the text? What did they want us to know? What did they want us to believe? Key themes, key quotes, key aesthetic features used like symbol or allegory, and key characters and relationships. Really important. The number one tip I have for students who come to me and say, how can I improve my English skills, or how can I improve my literature skills? Just like any other skill or habit that you have in life, it needs to be practiced. It needs to be developed and trained over time. So I encourage you to practice your writing as often as possible. So twice in the year, when it comes to analytical, you're expected to write a concise, intelligent, well-constructed, well-supported essay in exam conditions in just over 2 hours. So the skills that we've talked about before can help you, but not as much as practicing your writing does. So how do you practice well? You need to practice as if you were in the exam room itself, because those are the conditions you're going to be expected to deal with on the real day. So set the space, get rid of distractions, phones go away, iPads go away, laptops go away, all of the devices. Have in your sight of some kind of clock or timer so that you can be experiencing the same sort of pressure that comes with being on a deadline. Practice the whole essay, so don't just write a plan in exam conditions, or don't just write a paragraph in exam conditions. Practice the whole essay from plan to conclusion, and write as though you were in the exam. So don't write contractions or slang or scribble quickly, oh, you know what I mean. Write as if a marker was going to be the last person to read that work. Jump through all the hoops of an exam. And then edit in the same way that you would edit in an exam. Proofread really carefully, and then when the time is concluded and you have a little bit of space to breathe, go ahead and find your weaknesses. Note that it took you longer to write your introduction than anticipated. Note that your topic sentences weren't as strong as you thought they were. Get feedback. So ask people to read over your work and see how you went, even if that's just holding up your work next to the marking guide and finding exactly what would have let you down if you were marked explicitly. And also swap the work. I know all of you will have friends or peers in your classes. Ask them if they'd be willing to read over your work and get some feedback, and offer to help them with theirs as well. So really important. All right. The other key way that you can be building your strength in literature and English subjects more broadly is to be reading as often as possible. It improves your vocabulary, your critical thinking, and even boosts creativity. And it's all done by actively consuming literature other than the literature that you are assigned to read. And I encourage you to think outside of the box, be reading and interacting with things that you maybe wouldn't usually read. Poetry, for example, is not something that I'm naturally drawn to, but I can learn so much from reading for it, or nonfiction as well. Find a memoir of someone that you like or enjoy. And it should be fun. So you choose texts and books with concepts that excite you and don't overthink it. You don't want reading to be a chore. So when you're reading recreationally, you don't want to be annotating, you don't want to be thinking too deeply about things. Just enjoy it and let the information absorb into you as you go.